let's just do a little bit of introductions, really. So, yeah, my name's Juliet. I live here in Southend. Um, and Tim and I, we've known each other actually for a long time. And it's really nice to be doing a little bit of work together at the moment with asset-based community development. I know it's a really important topic and there's a lot of interest in it. And what we're doing today is really just like a little taster. And if there's interest in doing more training, we're available to deliver that for you locally or online. Um, my background is in a lot of community work. Often that's been through churches, but not all the time. The last 8 years or so, I've been a senior community organiser with Citizens Essex, which is part of Citizens UK. And that's been very much about helping communities find their voices and build connections with other communities so that they can increase that power, so that they can bring about the change that they want to see in their communities. But all the time, it starts with understanding what you've already got in your community and knowing what your strengths are. So I'm excited for us to be looking at that through the ABCD training today. So let me pass on to Tim. Tim can introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim. I live in Birmingham. Apologies, I'm not actually in my own space. I'm actually doing with a piece of work that I'm doing in Worcester. So I'm actually live in Birmingham. I'm in Worcester, but as you can tell from my accent, I am actually from Essex. So I grew up just outside Chelmsford, and so went night clubbing in Southend a lot. So when I was younger. So mischievous. So I have been doing youth and community work for 30 odd years. I was chief executive of a youth and community work organisation for a good number of years. All of those connections are why I know Juliet. There's lots of overlap with what Juliet was doing. But also for the last 21 years, I've been living in a community in East Birmingham, like a so-called deprived community. And for the last 15 years, we have been doing community building work because we felt that was the best form of change that we could engage with people. So one of the questions we always ask is like, what do we want to change, and where does that change kind of come from? So asking those kind of right questions, if you like. So I'm very immersed on the ground with it, but now I spend a lot of my time as well around the country and actually in some other countries as well. Like I've just come back from Australia, helping people think about this approach called asset-based kind of community development. So I'm really, really pleased to be here. And I actually was just saying before we got on the call that I did ABCD training for Active Essex, who some of you may know a good few years ago, did quite a lot of work kind of with them. So it's lovely to be back with people from that part of the world.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Tim. And yeah, it is really great to be working again with Tim. We our lives have overlapped in many ways. So this feels like a really natural kind of thing. One final thing just to throw in, I am also a coach, like a leadership coach, and my circumstances have changed recently, so I've got more time to devote to that, and I'm really enjoying kind of journeying with people through their own development and exploring their own leadership, and yeah, really enjoying that. So let me hand back to Tim. And Tim, do you want to just outline briefly what we're going to look at in this session and what the outcome's for? And then when Tim has done that for a few minutes, we're going to go straight into our breakouts after that. So Tim, over to you.
Fantastic. So if we had more time, I would ask you what's brought you here as my kind of opening question. So I can't do that, although if you want to stick that in the chat, that might be an interesting thing for us to do, because it's always interesting about why people come. So we put this together. Hopefully that will be interesting to you in terms of your work. So the best place to start anything with this kind of work, I think, is actually by telling stories. So that's one of the first things we're going to do. And actually ABCD emerged from two guys called John McKnight and Jodie Kretzmann, who went and listened to stories in communities, and then kind of went in their listening of stories, then did some reflecting about what they were hearing, what themes were emerging. And actually that's how asset-based community development kind of developed. So we're going to start actually with a similar question to the one that they asked, etc. And Juliet's going to do that kind of for us. Then if it's all right, like not quite knowing like what you're here for and what you want, so I hope this will be helpful, is I'm just going to run through some key principles, if you like, of asset-based community development. Now, if we were doing a full-blown training, like couple of days program, which is what I often do, we would have lots of time to unpack these principles, to make them practically applicable, like etc. So apologies that we're probably going to just kind of do a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I hope that whets your appetite enough to feel that you might want to explore this kind of in a deeper way, or at least gives you some things to go away like and think about. So I'm going to kind of do that. Then we're going to introduce one practical tool that may help you reflect upon where you might be at kind of with this work. And then Juliet's going to put you into, facilitate you back into breakout groups again for you to kind of reflect upon that tool. And that may help you locate yourself in terms of where you are, like with this way of thinking and of this way like of working. And then we'll do a kind of final roundup at the end. So I hope that sounds okay. Does that sound all right? Like for people, does that sound like something that is worth your time? Because I know that you're giving time to be here. So hopefully that will make our 90 minutes time well spent for you. Lovely.
Thanks so much, Tim. And, you know, if you have specific questions, do please put them in the chat. It's lovely to be reading a little bit about who's in the room at the moment. Really nice to be hearing from you, Diane, and your what you're wanting to learn, Angela as well, Debbie. So do continue to add those if you'd like to. But we're going to break into breakout rooms, and we're going to have 10 minutes, if that's all right, Jamie, please. There's going to be about 5 of you in each group. And so we're going to start with stories, as Tim says. That's the, that's the gold, isn't it, for us? The gold dust is our stories. And I wonder whether you might each want to tell a short story, well, introduce yourself, obviously, your name and perhaps which organisation or community you're here with, and maybe tell us a little story of when people came together in order to, sorry, my screen's just gone. When people have come together in order to kind of improve something or to strengthen their community. Sorry, Tim, have I got that right? I can't, hang on, my screen just went.
Yes. So
yeah.
If you,
sorry, when people came together to make things better, and what was it that that they tapped into to make that thing better? So maybe you've got an example in your community, in your neighbourhood, on your street, in the organisation that you're with, or somewhere where you volunteer, where people came together to do something and to make something better. Share that and maybe reflect a bit on what were the things that enabled them to make that thing better.
Wonderful. So we'll start with group 1. I'm not picking on anyone in particular, but I'm going to call it Jamie Pennycock's group. So Jamie, have you got anyone in your group that wants to feedback?
Is that me? Was I in that group?
Yes, you was, Michelle. You was.
That was me. So it was quite a nice mix of council, charities, in that group, all doing different things, but all about empowering and positive mindset and accessibility and bringing people together, so they're kind of that theme of what that everyone was doing that type of stuff. It's nice.
Really, really important things, isn't it, of bringing people together. Absolutely, so key. Thank you for feeding back for that group.
Thank you, Michelle. So room 2, we've got Peter Lover, Nicola Young's group. So is there anyone in that group that would like to feed back?
Yes, I think I volunteered myself.
Thank you, Tim.
To do that. But it was actually seemed quite similar to group 1's conversation. I think the words, empowerment, supporting, looking at the positive side came through quite a lot. And one of the observations that I made were through all of the stories. It was really about looking at where there's resource, where there's opportunity, and where actually just giving a little bit of that empowers people to do, you know, whatever it is that that community was coming together to do. So we'd had stories about a Christmas market that was being put together around looking at the positive side of autism and looking at tackling isolation as well. But there were some really key themes throughout those quite different projects and pieces of work.
That's really key, isn't it? So those resources that are available that we could tap into, and those opportunities, creating opportunities for that to like shine through and become apparent, because without those opportunities, it's all just kind of hidden, isn't it? Like we need to kind of turn over the soil a little bit in order to kind of discover it, that it's there. It's not that it's absent, it's just that we need to be able to see it. So yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Temi. Next group.
So next group we have Diane, Wendy, Debbie, Knox group. So is there anyone in that group that would like to feedback for us?
I don't mind going for it. We were a bit of a quiet, nervous group, I think. People were quite reluctant to speak. But yeah, I think similar things as the other groups, that it's about being embedded in the community, having that relationship with people. It's not about dictating to others what should happen, even if it's a good project. So yeah, others are more than welcome to chip in.
Did anyone else from that group want to add to that? No, I think they're really important things to take notice of. I think, yeah, how can we be embedded in our communities? What are the mechanisms for helping us to do that in this kind of online environment, you know, where our community might be virtual, it might be online, and yet actually, how do we get embedded in the physical community and build those relationships? And I really resonate with what you're saying there about not dictating. I think that's so vital. Like a lot of the work I've done in a variety of different urban communities, such an underlying resentment of being done to, you know, of having the latest project come in, you know, it'll be there for 3 years because it's got 3 years funding, and then it will disappear again. And like, no matter whether you want that project or not, it's coming. And, you know, just like being done to and being dictated to. And yeah, I'm sure we can all think of lots of different examples. So thank you very much for sharing that from your group, Diane. Next group.
Next group is group 4. So Angela Dress, is there anyone in your group that was nominated to feedback?
Was that my group? Sorry, Jamie, I think it was. I nominated myself.
Yeah, Stuart, that's you as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, I did write the names down, but I wasn't too sure on the surnames. So yeah, there's 4 of us in our group, including myself. 2 of them quite new to their roles, only just started recently. So it's really for them to get a real understanding of what ABCD is and how that can be sort of embedded into their day-to-day role. But, you know, we took some stories out of it about what they've currently done in that sort of quick turnaround of space and quick turnaround of space since they started their role. So, for example, Angela, I believe it was Angela, she's already set up in-person meetings within the council with the leader of the council to bring faith groups together to understand their common ground. So already bringing people together at a localized level. Georgia, who's just started a new role in Trust Links as an area lead for the Southwest, was talking about how a Healthy Mind Hub could be opening soon. So they're bringing people together on a 6-weekly basis for new activities. And just to get more people active. So we're just talking about sort of how we're going to sort of embed ABCD into our role. But I said, while they're new into their role, it's a really good opportunity. And, you know, I've known Tim for a number of years. He's done a few things with Active Essex, and, you know, I could say how beneficial it was. You know, for us at Active Essex, we've had ABCD and place-based working as one of our sort of you know, by gospel, you know, for a number of years now. And, you know, I was just talking about a meeting about just what you said there, Julia, about, you know, focusing on not just chucking something in an area and saying that's what you'll get. Is, you know, working from that bottom-up approach, understanding what it is the community want, what it is they need, hearing their voices, bringing people together into stakeholder groups or community meetings. You know, I brought a point up in our group saying, you know, we have networking meetings and you got people who come together who live 5 minutes away or work 5 minutes away from each other and they don't know they exist. And they come to these meetings and they build a relationship and collaborate over the years. And I think it was George who said, "Oh, I used to work in a hospital across the road to my new job at Trustlinks, and I didn't know Trustlinks were there." So it's a great example of when you're in your sort of own working bubble in terms of that capacity, you're so busy that it takes these meetings to build relationships and network together and start creating opportunities. And I'm sure Tim's going to mention, or it might be brought up, but so important to focus on what's strong in an area, not what's wrong. And that's what we sort of live by Active Essex is I said that bottom approach and just focusing on what's strong in an area, not just the negatives.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you so much for the feedback from your group. So many important things in there, and again, the value of in-person meetings, and even just taking that initiative to organise some one-to-one conversations with people, just to make that connection and understand what people bring and who they are, finding that common ground, which is always there somewhere, that common ground. So yeah, thank you very much, Stuart. Any other groups?
We've got one more group. So we've got Chiquita and John Philpott's group. So if anyone wants to jump in from that group, give us a quick update.
Yeah, that'll be me, nominated. So we had quite a few stories which are really nice in our group. So John spoke about his story was basically involved making sure that the community was invested. So if the community was invested, it was more likely to succeed. Yvonne's one was about breaking down barriers. So it was introducing to both young people, but from different backgrounds. One having disabilities, one not. So it was all about breaking down barriers and getting into groups to understand each other in order to build stronger communities. Elif spoke about cross-sector partnerships between councils, businesses and organisations, and how cross-sector partnership can really help build on those communities. Sometimes we need the council to not have a barrier there in order to proceed with certain things. Michelle spoke about fostering relationships. Bit of a pun there because she was actually talking about foster carers. But it's about having autonomy so that they didn't rely on the council for certain things and they could rely on themselves and do things how they want to. But we also had really interesting conversations around how it can sometimes be challenging to get the community to come together, even though they really want something or they speak about wanting something, and how pre-pandemic it was more organic. I think Yvette mentioned that it was more organic for groups coming together, whereas now it does feel a little bit more challenging. However, in my role as a community builder, I am starting to see a bit of a shift where people want to leave the online social world behind and have more face-to-face interactions. However, we also spoke about cost of living now being a factor in certain things. And then we finished the conversation with the importance of who's leading these, or not necessarily leading, but who's facilitating these projects forward. About community enablers, community connectors, and making sure there was a community need. And yeah, that was us. We had really, really good conversations.
That's really great to hear. And again, thank you. There's such great reflections from all of you. Yeah, I agree. Like just breaking down those barriers is so key. And again, you've talked about building those relationships and the challenges since the pandemic and maybe the shifts that are happening in helping that to become a bit more organic now, possibly like it used to be. And yeah, I love what you say about the sectors working across their differences and being in alliances together. Actually, that was a lot of what I did as a community organizer with Citizens Essex, bringing really diverse organizations together who normally wouldn't spend time with each other, and then actually discovering that they are strengthened because they build this relationship with one another. So yeah, thank you very much, Chiquita, for that. Just want to come back because Lauren, you were not able to go into a group and you stayed in with me and Tim and Jamie. But just briefly, do you want to add any reflections from our conversations in?
I think, our conversation sort of just reflects what was going on for everyone. Well, it was more, I think we were talking about the need to connect across communities and finding ways in which we can do that and utilise the people in the community so that they can support other members of the community in small ways, not replacing clinicians, but providing something very different but equally as potent and as valuable.
I was thinking, like, what can we do to kind of frame thinking about some key principles of asset-based community development and why we might think about it. And your stories are one of the ways kind of into that, because actually that's how ABCD started. It started with people going around 20 American cities, 300 neighbors, and listening to capturing 3,000 stories of what does it look like if we don't ask a question that starts with needs, but we ask a question that starts with, like, what would you like to contribute? What does it look like to do things together? So we're going to use Humpty Dumpty as a bit of a framing. So we're going to start with Humpty Dumpty and end with Humpty Dumpty. So people know the nursery rhyme, Humpty Dumpty, like people know that. So Humpty Dumpty lives this very wobbly life, and he lives it on his own on this wall. And when his wobble gets too much, he falls off the wall, and who has to come and rescue him? All the king's horses and all the king's men have to try and put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And that's often how people experience their lives. Life can feel fragile, life can feel wobbly, life can feel isolating. And then when it goes a bit wrong, the only place we often know where to try and turn to is we hope that the benevolence of some services will kind of piece us back together a little bit again, together, so that we can continue to kind of move on with our life. And I want to help us explore, maybe there's a different way that Humpty Dumpty could experience kind of life. And that's what we're going to kind of have a bit of a go at. What does it look like if Humpty Dumpty doesn't fall off the wall kind of one way where he gets fixed and rescued by services? What does it look like if Humpty Dumpty falls the other way? Like, what might catch Humpty Dumpty? What might that kind of look like? So we're going to have a bit of an explore that just for a few minutes. It will be a bit whistle stoppy because this is normally what we would take a couple of, a day or so to kind of explore, but hopefully this will be helpful. And then we're going to give you more chance to talk together. So if you flick the slide, Tony. So hopefully you can see what is going on here. What's going on in this infographic? What's happening here, do we think? Anyone want to share? What do you notice?
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? Because it's very simple. Koalas live high up in the tree, but if there's no tree, then they're not going to be in their full environment, are they? So then they're not going to thrive to the best.
Brilliant, brilliant. So what we want to pay attention to is, what is it that enables human beings to flourish and to flourish together? What is that? And that's a better question than how do we fix people or rescue people, etc. A better question is, how do we help people flourish? Because what lots of people, potentially at least, you can challenge me if you don't think this is right, experience is they often live the Humpty Dumpty life. Life feels wobbly, life feels fragile. And this isn't just about people who live in so-called deprived communities. Lots of people experience their lives kind of in that kind of way. And then life gets tougher, and then along come what I call salaried strangers who come along and say, your problem is you're struggling with your mental health. What you need is my service to kind of fix that problem for you. Now, that doesn't mean those people who do that are badly motivated. Please don't hear it in that way. But what it doesn't do is address the fundamental question of intrinsically, what is it that human beings need to flourish? And what human beings, in my mind, need in order to be able to flourish. And you can get at this from lots of different kind of worldviews. I have a bit of a faith perspective on some of this stuff. Is we need to feel connected. We need to feel we belong. We need to feel that we're valuable. We need to feel we've got a sense of safety. We need to feel we've got a sense of purpose and meaning. Like, we've got those things that we might describe as the intrinsic things that human beings need. If I asked you what makes a good life for you, I would be pretty confident that not a lot of what you say would be because you received a service. It would be to do with the quality of your relationships, I suspect, and the other things that make life helpful and meaningful. But we go to services when we need some extra professional support outside of having good kind of social relationships, like etc. And I want to posit that argument that it's not we don't need professionals, it's not that we don't need services, but if we do not pay attention to the village in which people can flourish, then all we're going to do is add more and more pressure to services because people feel that's the only place that they can turn. So my question is, if it takes a village to ... raise a child, etc., who is paying attention to the village? And that in my own community, that's what we've been doing, paying attention to how do we grow the kind of community that people want to live in, and people want to grow up in, and people want to grow old in, and that people want to die in, and that people want to play in, and that maybe even want to work in. Like, how do we grow that kind of community so that the metaphorical koala can flourish? So that's what we've been doing, and maybe that's a different framing for us to think about than a kind of needs-based service provision, do you know what I mean, kind of mode of thinking of change. Maybe the service provision can supplement living life well when we need it. When we are ill, we need a doctor, rather than being the kind of port of call, do you know what I mean, if you like. So my argument with this stuff is what we have done is we have created isolated, disconnected lives. Issues happen because of that. We pathologize people because of it. And then we have silo interventions to try and fix what we think is a particular problem in someone's life. And that has meant that citizenship has gone on the retreat because people think that what they experience and what they need is at the point of a service. And I want to kind of argue that that shouldn't be the starting point for any of our lives if we're going to flourish together. So that's kind of what that infographic is. And ABCD starts from that kind of perspective. How do we grow the kind of place that enables people to flourish together? How do we do that? That's kind of what ABCD is. So if you click the slide again, Jamie, and I put stuff in the comments if you want, along the way, but I'm just going to keep talking. If you put stuff in the comments, I might reference it as we're talking, but I'm really sorry that I haven't got time to kind of interact and kind of bounce around kind of some of this thinking. So if you want that, we can do some kind of longer term training and thinking about that stuff. So one of the things you might say then is, well, hang on a minute, but lots of, even if that's true, this sense of flourishing in a place isn't something that people easily can see. And that's a core ABCD principle, is that what we want to do, my friend Cormac talks about this stuff, is to think about how we make what we call the invisible visible. So how we make the potential of people and the potential of a place visible to people, where they begin to see not just the problems, but they begin to see the possibilities, both in themselves and in the community kind of around them. So we move people from what I describe as scarcity to abundance, where people, instead of just moaning about the things they don't have, and if only the council would do its job properly, everything would be all right, to what is it that we have? So one of the little mantras is, you can't know what you need until you know what you have. And so ABCD is about helping people discover what they have before they then begin to think about what it is that they need, which then puts services and outside support into a better context for people. And the result of that is, because what we want to do is, if you flick the slide, Jamie, and I can tell you stories actually about how we've made the invisible visible if you want, but I haven't got time at the moment, but I can do that if we get a bit of time, is we want to think about our communities not as maps of misery, where you get all that data that tells you what's wrong with a place. We want to think about what is the gold in our community. We're like pirates, do you know what I mean? We're going searching for hidden treasure. And what we want to do is help people discover that treasure. That's the first mode of community development change that we want to think about. How do we help people discover what it is that they have? And that's about helping people get involved in their community and think about what gifts and skills and capacities they've got with others to be able to turn those possibilities into something that is meaningful for them, however big or small that might that might be. So if you click the slide again, it's a mantra of what would it look like if we started with what's strong and not what's wrong in people and in communities. What would it look like? Because lots of people experience people coming into their community from the outside and saying your problem is because the data tells us that you've got health inequalities or high unemployment or poor housing. And those things, I'm a fan of what Juliet has been doing with citizens. There are some things where we need to bring people together to campaign for change where outside institutions are not acting properly. But we go back to the koala, when we think about having a good life, which is one way to think about this stuff, however good our housing is, that isn't the only thing that helps us think about having a good life. So that can't come from the outside. That has to come from somewhere else. So what if we started building community life on the inside, starting with what's good, starting with what's strong, starting with what's possible? Now, that doesn't mean we ignore what's wrong. We might use what's strong to make it stronger. So in my community, we would talk about community spirit, for example, and you would think about, right, if we've got community spirit as a strength, how can we make that stronger? How can we involve more people? So you start with what's strong and try and make it stronger. It's like exercising a muscle, like you try and grow the power of the community to kind of concentrate on what's good about it and to make that even more powerful for itself. But you might also use what's strong to fix what's wrong. Like you might say, actually, we're really worried about X, Y, Z, or we're concerned about this, or this isn't right in our community. Right, what is it that we can do together? What gifts and skills and resources have we got together where actually we could do something about the things that are important, to us? You want to flick this, so hopefully that makes sense to people. Sorry, this whistle-stoppy talk. And one of the core things we want to think about doing is we want to think about how do we see people. So often what people, when they experience services, is people telling them what's wrong with them. Why do people not turn up to parenting classes that are advertised? Because the message they often get is, you're a rubbish parent and you need a class to tell you how to be a good parent. You see what I mean? Like if you start with what's wrong, people perceive that, then actually people don't engage with that. So if we start with what are people gifted in, what are they talented in, what are they interested in, what are they passionate about, what do they care about? If we start with where people are, that gives us a different route into working with people. And here's a suggestion for me about why do people, we want to pay attention to what do people care enough about in their community to show up well with? What do people care about? So often what people experience is come and participate in this program that we have decided we're going to put on for you, or the funder has decided we're going to put on for you, or come and volunteer for our project or for what we're doing. ABCD starts in a different place. It says, let's relocate authority and pay attention to what you care about, what's important to you, individually and collectively. And can I suggest there's 6 kind of areas that we might want to think about? We want to think about what people care about. They might care about young people. They might care about green spaces. They might care about cooking. There's lots of things that people might care about. What are people concerned about? They might be worried about the litter. They might be worried about, are their children got positive things to do outside of school? They might care about might be concerned about lots of different things. People show up because they've got a gift or a skill they'd like to share with others. I love knitting or cooking or playing board games or local history or whatever it might be. I care about that. I have skill about that. I know something about that, and I'd love to do that with other people. I might even want to teach that to other people. A good question to ask someone is, is there something that you would like to teach others? You know what I mean? As a way of thinking about getting them involved. So gifts and skills. People show up because they value the friendship and belonging. They come along because it in inverted commas gets them out the house. And when they say that, what they mean is, I get to be with other people. So people's instinctive feeling that social connection is really important to them. So how do we create hospitable, welcoming, belonging spaces that enable people to build friendships and neighborliness with each other? And then the last 2 are people will show up because there's a crisis. We saw that in COVID. There's actually a problem, but you see that when in my community we've had people who've had cancer, lots of different things gone on, you know, in someone's had their house flooded, you know, people show up when actually there's a bit of a crisis. And then the final one is people show up when there's an injustice or an unfairness. Something's not right in their community and they get angry about it. Juliet could talk to you about community organising, where you pay attention to what makes people angry and then you organise people around that. And so you organise people around passion, energy, interests, what's important to them. And so we pay attention to that, not so that we can then do something for them, but so that we can help them contribute together to building community life together. That's the kind of mantra about that. So hopefully that kind of makes some sense in this whistle-stoppy tour. So I've just got a couple more slides, like 2 or 3 slides probably to go, in this little bit. So if you're all right hanging on in there with me, let me just do the next couple of bits, because like I say, we could always come and do some training that unpacks this stuff and allows you a bit more time to think about it. So if you can click the slide, Jamie, that'd be great. So what did, when John McKnight and Jodie Kretzmann listened to these 3,000 stories, what were the things that they discovered were the assets or resources in communities? What were those things? And then the art of community building is to weave these things together. So help people discover these things in their community and the possibilities they might bring, to build a more connected community where people are connecting things together and then mobilize those connections into action. So discover, connect, mobilize is the kind of 3 shifts that we would talk about. So here are the 6 kind of building blocks that we would talk about. The passion, skills, gifts, contributions of residents. So that's we've already talked about kind of that one. So people is the key asset, if you like. But what else might be assets? Local associations, groups and spaces that people like to belong to. They might be really informal things, near me, there's a group of guys who play dominoes together every week, in the local park. They're not a constituted group, they don't need to be, but they meet up every week, and that's their associational life. But a scout group might be associational life, a drama group might be associational life, a local history group might be associational life. You know, there's lots of things. We have a local writing group, we have cooking groups, so those things where people kind of associate with each other. And why that's so important is that's places where people can belong and places where they can contribute around what they're passionate about, what they're interested in, what they're good at, etc. So at one level, you can measure the health of a community by the health of its kind of associational life. The other ones are probably pretty obvious. Community capacity building capacities of local institutions, so local schools, local health centres, local faith communities, when they get community facing and use their gifts and skills and resources for community life, then those institutions become contributors to the ecology, if you like, of a place. The built and natural environment, so community centres, ponds, woods, walking spaces, BMX tracks, paths, walking routes, whatever it might, green spaces, whatever it might be, but thinking about the built and natural environment, how can those things be assets? How can those things help contribute to building community life together? The economic and non-monetary exchange, so how we exchange resources around a neighbourhood. So it's called, the technical stuff is called the circular economy, how we help things go round a community. Those things might be simply people being generous with each other, but there's also kind of schematic things that you can do, like time banking, buy local schemes, car share schemes, community energy schemes, credit unions. There's lots of structured things that you can do to kind of help people do those things. And then the final one, which is why we started with stories, is this idea of what are the stories of a neighbourhood, what are the traditions in a neighbourhood. And some of that is bringing together the diversity of the neighbourhood to celebrate each other's traditions and things that are important to them, but also having some shared traditions in your own community. And again, I could talk to people. I know there's some people going, goodbye, thank you for coming. Hope that was helpful. So I'm just going to do a couple more and then I'm going to stop and introduce us to a particular tool. So if Juliet's right to give me just a couple more minutes, I will just let me kind of do these last couple because hopefully they're helpful for people. So I'm going to flick the slide. In fact, let's flick 2 slides actually. You don't need to do this one. So we talk about this idea of the residence power ladder. So what we don't want to do in asset-based community development is simply say to people, what is it you need or what is it you want? And then we will go away and do that for you. Like asset-based community development is trying to nurture people on a journey where they feel they can move from being the recipients of other people's stuff to being producers of solutions, producers of activity, producers of community life together. So we want to think about nurturing residents up what we call the kind of power ladder to help people kind of go on that, like to go on that journey. If you want to flick the slide again. And the way we think about doing that is starting by having good life conversations with people. What does a good life look like in this community? Now, that might be just a general thing. This is actually a words cloud of what people said in our community. So once you start exploring that, we start saying to people, right, okay, well, how can we help more of us feel joy? Or how can we help more of us feel thankful? Or what do we need to do to make each other smile? Like you begin to kind of have those conversations with residents that enable them to kind of animate themselves. So the word animateur means to breathe life in French. So you're animating things. You're not doing passive opinion asking, what do you want? You're like, what does a good life look like to you and how do we get it? And what would you like to contribute to that? And who else do you know? And what else could we do? Do you see what I mean? So you're kind of framing it in a contributory, do you know what I mean, kind of manner. And again, I could explore good life conversations with you, whatever. So we go 2 slides, Jamie, and I'll finish with this one for this little bit and then introduce the tool. So you might think, oh my goodness me, Tim, you're putting a lot on communities when you describe this, and you're not describing the messiness of community life. So I want to assure you that I live in a community where there's plenty of messiness of community life. So like this is not a panacea kind of for all ills. It's saying one mode of change is to help people build community life together using what's strong and starting from what's in the community rather than what's outside of it. But you can think about it in this kind of 3-lane swimming pool kind of way. You might start with, what is it the community can do? What is the by us stuff? What is it that communities actually are already doing, can do, need to just be encouraged into doing, where actually they're doing things that are good things together. And that's a really good thing. Lane 2, what is it that communities can do if we joined in with them, if we supported them, if we got alongside them, if we paid attention to what was important to them and journeyed with them? Like, what would that then look like? And then the 3rd lane is to say, of course, there are lots of things that aren't the place of communities to do. They are the place of services and statutory agencies and others and experts and professionals to do. And so what is it that we need to be done for us? So you actually get people to think about like having those things in the right spaces, because to have a good life together, you can't just be in lane 3 of the swimming pool, because those people and those institutions and those services won't give you all the things that you need for a good life. Some of those things, a good amount of those things actually need to come from within us and within this community. And so we want to invite you to citizenship so that you can help build community life together. That was very whistle-stoppy. So let me stop for a second. First of all, how was that? Was that okay? Did people get some stuff from that? Did everybody get kind of a thought from that? So it's a very whistle-stop introduction. I can only see a few people on my screen, but a few nods. So hopefully that was helpful to getting you into like some absolutely core principles of what we describe as asset-based community development. And like you say, we can, Juliet and I can come and help you unpack that like a lot more and give you more time to think about it and explore it.
Absolutely.
And what might that mean? We've got a whole bunch of practical things, like tools and thinking that we can do to help you like think about this approach. But I want to give you one tool, if that's all right, like just to help you think about it. And then Juliet's going to kind of get you into groups to kind of explore that. So if you flick the slides, Jamie, I want to introduce you. If you've not come across this already, it'll be very obvious, I suspect, to you because you're very experienced people, is to what we call the Helpers Crossroads. And what the Helpers Crossroads describes, it's a tool to help us think about what is the best way for us to help. Help is a bit of a pejorative term. I appreciate that, and there's a lot of negative language around it. So for the moment, go with the language in that. What it does is it says this isn't about attacking people for being poorly motivated. It's saying, just can we think about when we get to the crossroads of how we might help, like what are our assumptions about what is helpful and what might make change happen? And perhaps sometimes we default into like some assumptions about what's helpful without really kind of thinking it, or our institutional organization or our funding kind of pushes us like into that mode of thinking, and we don't get enough space to kind of take a step back and go, is that the right way that we should do it? So let me just walk you through the tool, and then Juliet's going to get you to think about it. So the tool basically is, we could help by doing things to the community. And the way we describe that is it's like a medical model. Because what happens when I go to the doctor? The doctor diagnoses my problem and prescribes the solution, and the doctor is the expert. So whilst I don't give up a complete agency in talking to the doctor, you go to the doctor appreciating that the doctor has expertise that you don't have. Okay, so we can do things like the medical approach, where actually we go, do you know what somebody might need? Is they might need a professional who knows what they're doing, who can simply say, this is what you need to do. Right? But we may also think of times when people have done things to people and to communities that have been unbelievably, violent and destructive and toxic, like to people. Is that all right? Does that make sense? Like the 2 model and what that is. The 4 model is probably something we're probably more familiar with, which is the charitable model. Like we do things for people. And the way we think about that is we think about it by saying, here are the things that people don't have capacity to do themselves. So, for example, a food bank is a classic 4 model. We go, people are destitute. People just literally do not have the resources to feed themselves and their family. And so therefore, we're going to do something for them. We're going to give them something. The danger with the 4 model is, one, you're saying people don't have capacity or communities don't have capacity. Do you really believe that? 2, the danger is you create dependency. And 3 is it makes everybody feel good about themselves, apart from the person who's the recipient. We feel good about doing good in the world, but actually the person who receives it often feels very undignified because they're having charity done to them. Like, something's been done kind of for them, and it leaves them feeling diminished. So there are some downsides to thinking about the 4 model, but there are times when perhaps it's needed. The with model is what you might describe as kind of co-production or co-design, like doing things with people. Like we want to tackle the lack of physical activity, like in this community. What is it we can do together to design what we need to do in order to overcome that problem, for example? So you co-produce or co-design like something. And what we are in that role is often we end up being not so much an expert as what we call a gapper. So you're kind of managing the gap, like coming off the train, mowing the gap between the platform and the train and the platform's edge. You're managing the relationship between institutions and organizations and communities. So you might be in your institutional organization saying, we should work much better with communities. Let's do that. And you might be saying to the community, like, come and work with us, like come and collaborate kind of with us. We genuinely want to hear your voice and your perspective on these things, so that actually we do things in the best way kind of possible. The buy model shouldn't be interpreted as abandonment. We're not abandoning communities necessarily, but what we're saying is, what's the power of people feeling that it was done by us for us? Like, what's the difference there? And so what we end up being in that role is more of a facilitator, an accompanier, someone journeying kind of with a community and helping the community navigate stuff. I've got a minute, so I'll kind of use a couple of examples in a story just to finish this bit off. Is a sporting analogy, because I know we've got some active Essex people like here, and maybe others who are into sports, is a golfer and a caddy. So the golfer is the community, the caddy is the kind of community builder, professional, like alongside. So if you think about how a caddy works, is what a caddy does is help the golfer think about, what are the obstacles, what are you trying to achieve, what's the right club to use, like, etc. So you're helping people like think things through, what's important to them and what they want to do. But ultimately, it's the golfer that plays the round of golf, not the caddy. Another example might be being a Sherpa. People know what a Sherpa is. If you're going to climb Mount Everest, that idea that sometimes we need people alongside us who do the journey with us, who maybe can help us spot the pitfalls, who maybe done a bit of that journey like before, and kind of can help us just think through how we do that journey and how we might do it well. You're not doing the journey for them, but you might be kind of alongside them, like in that journey. So that's another analogy. And my best story with it is this was a story that they tell on the West Wing, if you're a West Wing fan, the story of the man who fell down the hole. So a man falls down a hole and he goes, help, 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 like, can you get me out of this hole? I'm stuck. And a priest comes past and says, oh, like, you're stuck down the hole, I'll write you a prayer and you can pray your way out. No good, says the man. A engineer comes past, help, help, I'm stuck down the hole. And the engineer says, oh, I'll draw you a schematic and you can build a ladder to get yourself out of the hole. Again, there's no materials down here, like, that's no good. A friend comes by, help, 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 I've done the hole. And the friend jumps down the hole with the man. And the man goes, what are you doing? Like, now we're both down this hole stuck. And the friend says, but I've been down this hole before and I know the way out. So that idea that we are alongside people, helping people build something together, that is important, like, to them. So I hope that's helpful. That's the kind of tool, etc. So I know that was a bit whistle stoppy. So then Juliet's going to help us kind of take a deep breath and do some work talking together.
Wonderful. Tim, you packed so much into really concise presentation. Really value that's brilliant. And as Tim has said before, if you want to delve into this more deeply, we're very happy to facilitate some other stuff. For those who are not rushing off, really love us to break into breakout groups for 5 minutes, and to ask the question, what are the opportunities and dilemmas of using this approach for you? What are the opportunities and the dilemmas to using this approach for you? So if you can stay, let's go into breakout groups for 5 minutes, then we'd love to hear a little bit back from you, and then we'll wrap up. So we're racing towards the end of our time together. We really value you investing your lunch break into learning and connecting with one another. For us, it's really great to connect with you all. I wonder whether, if you want to, you can put in the chat any of your reflections from that breakout session, any questions, any kind of reflections that you were thinking about in terms of the opportunities and the dilemmas of using this approach. But hopefully that conversation time helped you just kind of think about it in your context and not just as a theoretical thing. This is a very grounded thing that we're exploring together and can be used in real communities. And we certainly heard some stories about that in our breakout group, and hopefully you heard some of that as well. I'm going to ask you in a minute to think of maybe one word to share that maybe it summarizes how you're feeling as we finish this time together, or one word that describes something that you're going to do next out of it. So you can be thinking about that for a bit, but Tim is just going to share one final slide before we do that with one another.
So I just want to do like a quick summary slide. So first of all, I've seen Diane in the yes, the one you were on, the second last one, and then we'll just go back to we'll do Humpty Dumpty at the end. Yeah, that's the one. And I've seen, Diane, what you've put in there about dilemmas, and thank you so much for sharing those, because if we had more time we would unpack those and explore those, because there are lots of things around institutional ways of working, the way funding works, etc., that are real dilemmas with this stuff, and I'd love to explore that some more with you. So I just wanted to acknowledge that was there. So what have we explored? Here are some key principles of ABCD that we've whistle-stopped toward and explored, and hopefully talked about in your groups together a little bit. So this idea of having reciprocal and valued relationships is key to people leading the life that they choose. So relationships and the quality of them shapes so much of how our lives kind of go. And so paying attention to the quality of relationships people do or don't have, and thinking about how we improve the quality of people's relationships is key. People are supported to connect and share their gifts, passions and interests where they live. Common core principle of ABCD. Reciprocity is vital for community and individual well-being. This sense of, it's not like a transactional like thing, but a sense of reciprocalness. Everybody believing that everybody has a valuable contribution to make, however difficult that person may be. I have seen people shift and change because people have constantly said to them, but I think you're good at this. I think you can contribute this. Why don't you come and join in with this? And over time, even some of those difficult people shift and change because they're beginning to have their strengths named for them, rather than being seen as a problem. The assets of an area are recognised and celebrated. So we value all the traditions and associations and groups and physical spaces, etc., in our community, and we celebrate them and we work out how to make the most of them. And that we relocate authority, that communities are often best placed to know what needs to change and even to help make that change happen themselves, and we can get alongside them and support them and help them to be able to do that. And so, last slide. Humpty Dumpty. Thanks, Madison. That's a really important point. Humpty Dumpty. What would it look like if instead, when Humpty Dumpty's life is isolated and disconnected and fragile, and Humpty Dumpty kind of falls off the wall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men rescue him and fix him and try and put him back together again? What would it look like if Humpty Dumpty fell the other side of the wall into the arms of a compassionate, contributing, connected community? What would Humpty Dumpty's life look like if we did that? And that is what ABCD is about, building that kind of context for people to live their lives in.
Wonderful. Juliet. Thank you very much, Tim and everybody. So let's just have a think for those of us that have made it to the end. Maybe in the where you can unmute yourself or put it in the chat, one word that you're taking away from our session today. It might be how you're feeling. It might be one principle. It might just be one action, one word each that you're taking away from here. Pop it in the chat or just unmute yourself and say it out loud. So John is taking away reflection.
Ability.
Ability, love it. Relationships. Thanks, Diane. Anyone else got a word? Expectations, love it. Transition, oh, love it. They're very active words coming out, some of them. Realism, yeah, it's really crucial. Transformation, yes, absolutely. Yes. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, do continue to put your words down if you would like to. Jamie, I wonder if you can just grab the final slide. Just going to share a slide. It has contact details on it, and maybe Jamie might circulate them anyway.
Yep.
But you're very welcome to reach out to me or to Tim and both of us. We're both very happy to explore delivering further training if you'd find it useful. Like I said, I'm also a coach. I'm available. This is just a little plug for a retreat that I'm organising. It's coming up very soon in February down at the Fisherman's Chapel in Lee. There's a couple of spaces still available, so if anyone's interested or if you want to share it, then please do. And then also the luncheon hour in February on the 10th. I'll be here again, and we're going to be looking at weaving trust across difference, which feeds in really well to help, to asset-based community development as well, how we develop those trusting relationships across difference and dial down the polarization that we're seeing so much of around the country at the moment. So do register and join us for that as well. But I think our time is up. So thank you all for coming. It's been a real pleasure to meet with you. We'd love to keep in touch with you.